The champagne cork hit the shiny chandelier in my parents' dining room. It made a loud pop and a small tinkling sound as it hit the crystals. Mom held up her phone, showing the cruise plan. Venice, Athens, Barcelona. 14 days, first-class cabins. Dad smiled, adjusting his fancy country club shirt as if it was the most important thing in the world. "Your building," Mom said, not looking at me, "is hurting the family's money reputation. We had to fix it." My brother Soren raised his glass. "Finally, someone with business sense," he said, his smile wide and proud. "But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it?" I sat at the far end of the table, the same seat I had always sat in at family dinners for 32 years. It felt familiar and lonely all at once. That was the chair where Dad once said, "Real estate isn't for daughters who study art history." The same table where Mom had said, "Find a good husband, sweetheart. That's a woman's real portfolio." Those words had hurt me when I was young, but I had learned to keep quiet and nod, just like I always did. That was 11 years ago. That week, I had bought the Harkwood building with money I had saved from T-Solveig art classes and working at galleries on weekends. I had worked hard for every penny. Dad had laughed when he heard. "That old, broken building on 4th Street in Madison? You'll lose everything." I had restored it all by myself. Every cracked window, every water-damaged wall, every ceiling that had fallen down. That building wasn't just a building. It was made with care and skill. Original crown molding, hand-carved banisters, terracotta walls that modern builders could not copy. Every part of it was precious and unique, and I had brought it back to life. "The paperwork is done," Dad said, sliding a folder across the table. His fingers left marks on the leather. "The buyer sent the money yesterday. We've already planned $200,000 for the Europe trip. Your brother gets $300,000 for his boat. Mom is getting the kitchen she's wanted. The sale is closed." I asked when it happened. Mom said she was already looking at Italian restaurants on her phone, scrolling and tapping, completely uninterested in me or my work. "You should thank us. That building was a problem." I thought about the ghost ledger I had started 3 years ago. It was a notebook in my head where I recorded every moment my family's cruelty cost me. Every insult, every dismissal, every moment of silence when I wanted to share my achievements. Thanksgiving 2019, I sent photos of the Harkwood building being restored. Dad interrupted after 12 seconds. "Nobody cares about your hobby. That hurt. That cost me confidence. Self-worth. The belief that my accomplishments mattered." Christmas 2020. The building was in Architectural Digest, a fancy magazine about important buildings. My family's response? They must have been desperate for content. That cost me joy, the happiness of celebrating something I had worked so hard for. Easter 2022. The city gave me an award for keeping the building safe and beautiful. I got $15,000 to continue restoring it. Mom's comment at dinner? Participation trophies aren't real achievements. That cost me pride. The feeling that being excellent would never be enough for them. I kept track. I had a mental notebook for years of my family being mean, of missed milestones, of confidence lost. All counted in moments of silence when I stopped sharing anything important. Soren checked his watch. "I'm meeting the boat dealer at 4. The 42-foot boat needs the money by Friday." Dad pulled out his phone, typing fast. "The Hendersons will want to know about the sale. Deals like this don't happen every day." I watched him carefully. The confidence of a man who thought he had tricked his daughter. The way he stood, proud and tall, like someone who had never faced real consequences. There's a moment when you realize your family assumes you will always be the one they underestimate. That the story of daughter who makes bad choices will never be challenged. I had spent 11 years feeding that story. I kept trying to prove myself, hoping they would finally see me. But like a slot masolve, approval doesn't come just because you worked hard. It's random. And I was playing with money I couldn't afford to lose. At 6:47 p.m., the doorbell rang. Dad frowned. "We're not expecting anyone." Mom opened the door. Dr. Amara Solvay stood there in a gray suit, wearing a badge from the Historical Society around her neck. Behind her were 2 police officers and a man wearing a city attorney jacket. "I'm looking for Cashin and Martha Harkwood," Dr. Solvay said. Her voice was serious and firm, like she had spent her whole life protecting things that people didn't understand the value of until they were gone. "That's us," Dad said, smiling. "Is this about a donation?" "We're in the middle of a family celebration." "This is about 4474th in Madison," Dr. Solvay said, holding a big leather folder. It was the kind that held papers with official seals. The Harkwood Building. I understand you claim to have sold it. Who approved this sale? The room went silent. That silence where it feels like all the air disappears and everyone freezes. Dad was the first to speak. We're the owners. We can sell. You're not the owners, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. I bought the Harkwood Building in October 2014, I said. With $127,000 I saved from T. Solveig and gallery work. The deed has been in my name for 11 years. Dr. Solveig nodded. Which is why the Historical Society contacted the actual owner, your daughter, when the fake sale paperwork appeared at the county clerk's office this morning. Soren's glass slipped, but he caught it. What? Your daughter, Dr. Solveig said, looking at my parents, has worked with the Historical Society for 6 years. She paid $180,000 to fix the outside of the building. She won the 2022 Heritage Preservation Award. The Harkwood Building is one of 12 properties she owns in the downtown district. Mom's phone dropped to the marble floor and cracked. 12, she whispered. One of the police officers stepped forward. We need to see the papers for this sale. Dad tried to pull up emails and bank transfers on his phone. The officer photographed every screen. The city attorney spoke. Mr. Harkwood, you accepted $1.2 million for a building you don't own. You already spent a lot of that money. Where did this money come from? The buyer, Dad said. He sent the money. There is no real buyer, I said. No one would pay $1.2 million for a historically protected building without checking the title. Dr. Solveig pulled out more papers. The Harkwood Building is actually worth $3.88 million. It has 6 shops inside, including an architecture office and 2 art galleries. It earns $340,000 a year in rent. Your daughter has kept 97% of it rented for 8 years. That's almost impossible. Mom said, she just teaches art classes. She is barely. She owns the building where she teaches, Dr. Solveig said. And 11 more buildings. The Harkwood Building is her main property. She handed a list of the properties. Each one was like a mini surprise for my parents. Property 1, 4474th and Madison. Harkwood Building. Built in 1887, fixed from 2014 to 2019. On the National Register of Historic Places. Where my parents said I would fail. Property 2, 1523, Heritage Boulevard. A building with shops and apartments. Bought in 2016. Property 3, 225 Oak Street. Another building with apartments above shops. Bought in 2017. Property 4, 311 Main Street. Small gallery spaces. Bought in 2018. Property 5, 402 Pine Avenue. A mixed-use building. Bought in 2018. Property 6, 119 Willow Road. Apartment complex. Bought in 2019. Property 7, 212 Cedar Lane. Shops and apartments. Bought in 2019. Property 8, 518 Maple Street. The old warehouse turned into lofts. Bought in 2020. Property 9, 623 Birch Avenue. Another mixed-use building. Bought in 2020. Property 10, 744 Elm Street. Small office building. Bought in 2021. Property 11, 859 Ash Street. Retail and apartments. Bought in 2021. Property 12, 963 Chestnut Road. Historic building recently restored. Bought in 2022. Each property had a story. Each had been fixed and cared for by me. Every property showed I wasn't just T. Solveig art. I was running a small empire of buildings, keeping the history of the city alive. Dr. Solveig looked at my parents and said, Your daughter has spent years protecting the history of this city. She has made these buildings beautiful again. She has done what you never believed she could do. Dad's face turned red. Mom's eyes were wide. Soren just looked shocked, like he had never imagined this side of me existed. I took a deep breath. I bought the Harkwood Building myself. I fixed it myself. And I have all the papers to prove it. You lied about the sale to take money for yourselves. That's fraud. And it's serious. The police officers nodded and began writing down what happened. Dr. Solveig organized the papers and handed copies to the city attorney. Everything was official. Everything was clear. I looked around the table at my family. The same table where I had spent decades feeling small, ignored, and underestimated. Now finally they could not lie about what I had done. I felt a mix of relief and quiet satisfaction. I had worked for 11 years to make something real. And now, the truth was impossible to hide. I realized something important that night. Hard work matters. Patience matters. Believing in yourself matters more than waiting for others to notice. Even when your family doesn't see you, even when they dismiss your dreams, you can still succeed. You can still protect what is precious. You can still shine. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled at the table. Dad had laughed at me once and said, "You're trying to do too much." I remember those words because they stuck in my head for many years. I had worked so hard, saved every penny, and dreamed of restoring old buildings and making them beautiful again. But Dad never saw that. He only saw mistakes waiting to happen. Property 3, 889 Riverside Drive. That was the old textile factory I had bought and changed into apartments. I had worked for months cleaning it, fixing broken windows, painting walls, and putting in new floors. I imagined families living there, kids running through the hallways, laughter echoing off the old brick walls. Soren had called it a disaster waiting for a demolition crew. He didn't see the future I saw. He only saw the cost. Property 4, 1847, Oakmont Boulevard. A small shopping center. I had made a secret donation of $50,000 to help fix up the downtown area, and the Historical Society had the record. I wanted the city to look alive again, to be proud of its history. Mom, however, had once said, "Charity is for people with money to waste." I didn't have extra money to waste. I had every penny counted carefully, but I wanted to help people anyway. Properties 5 to 8 were houses. 2 duplexes, 1 four-family home, and 1 historic house I had changed into offices. I had bought these during family gatherings. I could hear my parents' voices in my head. They said I was being silly with money, that I didn't know what I was doing, that I was wasting my life. Each time I reminded myself, I knew what I was doing. I just had to prove it. Property 9, 2234, Madison Street. Soren's jaw tightened when he saw it. That was where the Madison Club was. "Your daughter owns that building," Dr. Solvay said quietly but firmly. The country club rented the 3rd floor from her. I could see Soren's mind spinning. He had thought he was smarter than me. He hadn't counted on me owning that building. Property 10, 665 Park Avenue. This one was special because it had Mom's favorite boutique on the ground floor. She used to shop there for special days like birthdays or holidays. I had restored the store front and kept it exactly the way it had been. I knew she loved it once, but now she had no say in it. Property 11, 114th Street. The parking garage the city had commissioned. It made $180,000 a year in revenue. People came from all over to park their cars safely. I had ensured it was well-maintained, well-lit, and easy for everyone to use. Property 12, 33 Waterfront Plaza. The crown jewel of my collection. The historic Maritime Building. 7 commercial tenants inside. I had worked for months finding chandeliers, restoring the walls, fixing the floors, and making sure the building was safe and beautiful. Last month it was featured in Preservation Today magazine. Dad went gray. Not pale gray, the kind of gray that happens when someone realizes everything they believed is wrong. 12 buildings, he said, shaking his head. You couldn't have done all this in 11 years. Yes, I did, I said quietly, while you told everyone I was wasting my life. The police officer closed his notebook and looked at Dad carefully. Mr. Harkwood, we need to discuss the source of the $1.2 million. What happened next was very organized. Step by step, piece by piece. The kind of justice that doesn't care about feelings, but works on proof and facts. Step 1. Dad produced wire transfer records. The officer photographed everything. The money had come from an overseas account, using a shell company registered in Delaware. There were red flags everywhere. Step 2. The city attorney examined the closing documents. They looked official but were fake. The notary stamp came from a company that had been closed since 2021. The signature wasn't mine. Later, handwriting experts would prove it was a forgery with 99.2% certainty. Step 3. The officer called the bank and put it on speaker. The wire transfer was still pending. Real estate fraud flags had frozen it automatically. No money had actually arrived. Dad's European cruise was booked on credit. Soren's boat deposit was also credited. Mom's contractor was waiting for funds. Step 4. The evidence mounted. Dad had told the buyer about the building after seeing a local news segment about historic downtown properties. He had contacted someone he found online. They had built an elaborate scam. Professional emails, fake legal documents, wire transfer confirmations that were screenshots, not real banking records. Step 5. my attorney arrived. I had called him 2 hours earlier when Dr. Solvay contacted me about the fraudulent paperwork appearing in county records. He brought 11 years of documents, every deed, every tax payment, every renovation permit. Step 6. The officer issued citations. Dad, fraud, identity theft, forgery. Mom, complicity, misrepresentation. Soren hadn't committed crimes yet, but his boat deposit was made with money he believed was real. He would have to return it. Step 7. The city attorney explained the consequences. Criminal investigation. Potential charges. Restitution for any money that changed hands. Civil liability multiplied because Soren had already boasted publicly and given his deposit. Step 8. Dad tried to negotiate. We're family. We can work this out privately. The officer shook his head. You committed fraud. You forged documents. You attempted to sell property you don't own. This isn't a family matter anymore. Step 9. Dr. Solvay added the final piece. The Historical Society takes property fraud very seriously. We're pursuing maximum penalties. Your daughter has been an exemplary partner. You attempted to destroy protected heritage. Appeals? There won't be any. The evidence is absolute. I stood up. Everyone turned to look at me. For 11 years, I began slowly. I tried to feed the slot masalve of your approval. Each property I bought, each award I won, each recognition I received, I thought, this one will make them see me. But you were never going to see me because your story about me was more important than my reality. Sweetheart, Mom said, her voice trembling. I started the ghost ledger. Doesn't balance anymore, I said. You took too much. Years of dismissal, decades of being the daughter who didn't matter. Every family photo I was cropped out of. Every achievement you called luck. Every success you said was a phase. Every recognition is ignored. Dad's handshake. We were trying to help. You were trying to steal $1.2 million from property you thought I was too stupid to protect. Dr. Solvay closed her portfolio. Officers escorted my parents out. Mom is crying. Dad arguing. Soren sat frozen, phone in hand, probably trying to cancel his boat deposit. The house emptied. I was alone at the dining room table, sitting in my assigned seat at the far end. 6 months later, I stood at the grand reopening of the Harkwood Building's restored ballroom. The ceilings were 14 feet tall. Original chandeliers we found in the basement sparkled in the sunlight. Terracotta detailing that had taken 9 months to repair looked perfect. Dr. Solvay handed me a plaque. Historic Preservation Champion of the Year, for exemplary commitment to architectural heritage and community restoration. The crowd applauded. Tenants from all 12 properties, city council members, the actual mayor, not the country club crowd. My parents were impressed, but their social and legal consequences were severe. 18 months probation, $45,000 in legal fees. Their country club membership at my building was terminated. The truth was known to their friends. They had tried to steal from their own daughter, who actually owned all the places they frequented. Restraining orders were permanent. No contact. No reconciliation attempts. Soren paid back the boat dealer. His reputation as a successful entrepreneur evaporated when people learned his big deal was a fraud against his sister. My property portfolio grew. Property 13, acquired last month, the old courthouse building. Property 14, under contract, another landmark. The country club requested a lease renewal. I approved it, but I sent them a letter explaining the building's history. Purchased with savings while my family mocked me. Restored while being called foolish. Protected because I understood its value when they saw only money. There is no place for them in my world anymore. From the 12 fortresses I fought to protect, my future begins now. Not because I needed their approval, but because I never did. The gambler's fallacy ends when you stop feeding quarters into Ma Solvays that will never pay out. The jackpot isn't their love. It's your freedom. I walked through the Harkwood Building's restored lobby. Original marble and brass fixtures. Sunlight streamed through the 1887 windows I had personally restored piece by piece. Dad once called it a money pit. He was right about the pit, wrong about the money. Sometimes the best revenge isn't rage. It's surviving their dismissal so completely that they are forced to live in the empire they said you'd never build, and paying rent for the privilege. I remembered all the little moments while restoring my buildings. The first time a child ran across a polished floor, the smell of fresh paint in a renovated hallway, the sound of old chandeliers tinkling in the wind when the doors opened. I remembered the moments my parents dismissed me, laughed at my work, called me foolish. Those moments hurt. They hurt a lot, but they also gave me something else, motivation. Every time they said, "You can't," I said to myself, "I will." Every time Soren smirked, every time Dad shook his head, every time Mom rolled her eyes, I knew I had to keep going. And now I have. I could walk from the Riverside Apartments to Oakmont Boulevard and see the difference I made. Families smiling, shops thriving, businesses happy to be part of history instead of tearing it down. I could see my vision alive in bricks, mortar, and light. I could see what it meant to protect history, to restore beauty, to make people feel proud. And I could see what it meant to protect myself from people who didn't believe in me, even my own family. No more fake documents, no more stolen deposits, no more family betrayal. I had built my empire, piece by piece, brick by brick. And the best part was, it was mine. And in that moment, I knew something very important. I never needed their approval. Not once. Every building, every restoration, every award, every recognition, it had always been for me. And now I could finally enjoy it, knowing they could never take it away. Dad's warnings. Mom's dismissals. Soren's smirks. All gone. Only the buildings remained. Only the work remained. Only the life I had built for myself remained. I smiled. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. But out of freedom. I had survived. I had grown. I had won, not over them, but over their doubts, their lies, and their dismissals. The Harkwood building, my masterpiece, gleamed in the sunlight. And so did I.